Okay, welcome back once again, and today we're looking at Chapter 4, Problems 1. And this one we call Fun with DuPont Equations. And I hope you're having some fun. The two major DuPont equations we look at in this chapter is the first one is that the return on equity is equal to the return on assets times the equity multiplier, which reflects our level of debt use. And the return on equity is equal to the profit margin times total asset turnover times the equity multiplier. Equation 2 implies that the return on assets is equal to the profit margin times the total asset turnover. The equity multiplier. If Herndon Incorporated is only financed with debt and common equity, what is the equity multiplier if it is financed with 40% debt? Since total assets is equal to total common equity plus total debt, so if 40% is debt finance, 60% must be equity finance. Therefore, for every dollar of assets, we have 0.6 of equity. The equity multiplier is equal to total assets divided by total equity. So we can say that for every $1 of total assets, $0.6 is financed with total common equity. So we take 1 divided by 0.6, and we end up with an equity multiplier of 1.67. If the firm's return on equity is 16% and its return on assets is 8%, what is the debt to capital ratio assuming it has only debt and common equity? Well, return on equity is equal to the return on assets times the equity multiplier, and the equity multiplier is equal to total assets divided by total common equity, and total assets is equal to total invested capital. Therefore, ROE is equal to ROA times the equity multiplier. So 16% equals 8% times the equity multiplier, implying the equity multiplier is 2. So every $1 of equity, we have $2 of assets. Therefore, this implies that for every $1 of debt, so 1 divided by 2 is equal to 0.5, which is our debt to capital ratio. Our next problem is on ROE. Old Mark Corporation has $70 million in sales and an ROE of 15% and a total asset turnover of 2. Common equity is 30% of assets. Only common equity and debt are used. What is the firm's net income? Well, ROE is equal to the profit margin times total asset turnover times the equity multiplier. And by definition, the profit margin is equal to net income divided by sales. So we use the equation equating the return on equity to the profit margin times total asset turnover times equity multiplier. And we can say that 15% is equal to net income divided by 70 million times 2 times the equity multiplier. The equity multiplier is equal to 1 over 0.3, which is 3.33. So 15% is equal to net income divided by 70 million times 2 times 3.33, which implies that 15%, or return on equity, is equal to net income divided by 70 million times 6.66. Doing a little bit of algebra, we can then say that net income will be equal to 15% divided by 6.66 times 70 million, which is equal to 1.6 million. Our second problem on ROE, a firm projects that its profit margin will be 5%, its equity multiplier will be 2, and its sales to be 20 million. If ROE is projected to be 20%, what will its projected total assets have to be? Well, once again, ROE is equal to total profit margin times total asset turnover times equity multiplier. And total asset turnover is equal to sales divided by total assets. So using the equation that ROE is equal to profit margin times total asset turnover times equity multiplier, we can determine that 20% is equal to 5% times the total asset turnover times 2, which implies that the total asset turnover is 2. Given that total asset turnover is 2 and sales are 20 million, we can then solve algebraically for total assets, which will be 10 million. ROE 3, Duala Corp has a total asset turnover of 1.5, return on assets of 5%, and an ROE of 10%. It is financed equally with debt and common equity. What is its profit margin? Well, we know from the first equation of DuPont that return on equity is equal to return on assets times the equity multiplier. So that implies that the ROE of 10% is equal to the 5% of return on assets times the equity multiplier, which implies that the equity multiplier is 2. From the second equation, we can say that return on equity is equal to profit margin times total asset turnover times the equity multiplier. Return on equity is given as 10%. The profit margin is not given. Total asset turnover is 1.5, and equity multiplier is 2. Working algebraically, we can then solve for the profit margin being equal to 3.3%. Thank you.